It began with a single crate resting beside my market stall, just sitting there in the open like an invitation or maybe a challenge. And that crate was not just wood and corners and pixels, it was my effort carved into something tangible, a story. Told in the shape of a box waiting patiently for the next chapter. One had worked hard that day, the kind of hard that presses its weight into your virtual shoulders and leaves a memory not just in your inventory, but in the way you look at your land. And the way your boots press into the soil. I had walked those fields from one end to the other over and over again until I knew the terrain like I knew the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Each turn of the soil, each branch bent with fruit, each patch of sunlight felt familiar like a second home, or maybe even a first. I had collected with intention, not just grabbing what I could, but moving with a purpose, knowing that every step had to count, every second had to be used, and every crop had to serve a larger dream, because in this world, every harvest tells a story, and I was just beginning to write mine. I had sorted with care, organizing by type, by size, by color, sometimes even by the sound they made when they dropped into the crate, because it all mattered to me, not just for the profit, but for the pride, for the knowledge that I had taken something simple and shaped it into something worthy of being sold. And then I had walked those fields again and again until the paths themselves seemed to recognize me. The birds flying overhead seemed to call me by name, and the trees swayed like they too were part of my journey. Every bush, every vine, every leaf gave up its offering without protest, like the land itself understood that this moment, this day was special, and that something new was being born. Not just coins, not just upgrades, but identity, purpose, direction. So there I stood in front of my stall, a single crate resting like a treasure, waiting to be claimed, my heart full, my hands steady, and my mind fixed on the task ahead. Because this was not just a game, this was the cycle that every player must eventually face, the moment when all your effort, all your time, all your strategy meets the world outside your farm. The moment when the private work becomes public, the moment when the game looks back at you and silently asks, what now? This was where effort transformed into value, where the invisible hours turned into visible rewards, where you no longer wondered if the work was worth it, because you could feel it in your bones, in the soil, in the weight of the crate itself. This was the beginning of something bigger, and yet, even as I stood there in the glow of what I thought was triumph, I did not yet know that the biggest lesson was still coming. I did not know that the crate sitting beside me so openly, so vulnerably, was not just a symbol of success, but also an invitation to learn about the world beyond the harvest, a world filled not only with possibilities, but with risks and consequences and choices I had yet to imagine, ChatGPT said. And that is how it always begins, with a single crate, with a single hope, with a single belief that what you have created deserves a place in the world, a place of recognition, a place of return. And if you listen closely to the way the wind moves through the branches and the way the light reflects off the crate, you will hear what I heard, a question not spoken, but deeply felt. Are you ready? Are you ready to let go of the thing you worked so hard to gather, the thing you protected from the weather, from time, from the quiet creeping fear that maybe it would not be enough? Are you ready to watch it leave your hands and trust the world to meet your effort with reward? Are you ready to risk that something might go wrong, that someone might reach for it before the right moment, before your heart is done holding on to it? Because in this world, just like in life, not every crate is safe, and not every stall is sacred. There is a silence in that question, a weight that settles into your chest and wraps around your fingers as you prepare to place that crate down, because you are not just offering fruit or vegetables or crops, you are offering a part of your time, a piece of your story, the result of long mornings and longer evenings under a sun that never sets and a moon that always waits for your work to finish before it shines, and still you place it down, because that is what farmers do. They grow, they carry, they hope, and they release. And in that act of release, you say something without words. You say, I believe this is worthy. I believe this will come back to me in ways I cannot yet see. But as the crate rests there in the open light, as footsteps echo nearby, as shadows stretch across your stall, you begin to feel it, not fear exactly, but awareness, a sharpening of the moment, a sense that the world is watching now, not just to reward you, but to test you. Because from here, the path will split, and one way leads to gain and the other to loss. And the only thing standing between them is what you know and what you are willing to learn. And it all began with that one crate and the silent question that changed everything. Are you ready? Because what happens next is never what you expect. But as I stood there, the crate sitting beside me, another player dashed by, their shadow brushing against mine, and in an instant it was gone, not the crate itself, but what was inside. What I had filled with care was taken without a word, without a warning, without even a moment to react. And that was when I learned the truth about thieves, not the dramatic kind that wears a mask and sneaks under the cover of night, but the ones that blend and run past and scoop up your work like it was theirs all along. The world of Grow a Garden is not cruel, but it is alive. And where there is movement, there is risk. Where there is farming, there is selling. And where there is selling, there is always the chance that someone else will take what you have earned before you ever see the reward. The first time it happens, you feel disbelief. The second time, frustration. And by the third, you start to see the pattern, not just in them, but in yourself, because you begin to ask, what could I have done differently? How do I stop it? How do I keep what is mine and still play fair? So I stopped rushing and started watching. I noticed where the paths were most crowded. I stood back and timed my steps. I learned the flow of the other players, when they appeared, when they vanished, what times of day brought chaos, and what times delivered peace. I did not stop selling, but I sold smarter, not faster. I positioned my stall where visibility was low, not hidden, but not the center of attention. I turned away from the obvious and moved toward the forgotten edges, the quiet corners, the parts of the map where trees still whispered and the soil had not yet been disturbed. And I changed how I carried my harvest. No more dumping everything at once like a flashing target. No more carrying crates piled high like a beacon. I took less, but more often I split my yield into small hidden batches, not to hoard, but to protect. Because in this world, when you have everything in one basket, that basket might not be there when you turn around. Then came the strategies that were not written in any guide, the ones you learn only by playing with heart and eyes wide open. I started planting near the cell zone, not just for speed, but for control, a way to cut the distance between harvest and sale so short that no one could interfere. I practiced routes that looped and twisted, never the same path twice, because even in a digital world, patterns attract shadows, and I would not give them mine. And I made friends, not just allies, but real in-game companions, because nothing protects your crates like another pair of eyes. Nothing defends your hard work like a group who looks out for each other. We stood near each other's stalls, we watched the corners, and we gave warning when the dashers came. And soon enough, I realized that the real solution was not in hiding, but in building and turning the garden from a solo race into a shared rhythm. But still, there were times when nothing worked, when no matter how careful I was, the crate was snatched, when the thief was faster, smarter, or just lucky. And in those moments, I breathed deep and remembered this: every loss teaches something, every theft reveals a gap, and every time I rebuild, I grow stronger, not just in levels, but in awareness and patience and resilience. So, if you are just starting, if your crates are still being stolen, if you feel like the game is unfair, let me tell you this: it is not about becoming the fastest seller or the richest farmer. It is about learning the flow, the ebb and rhythm of the land, and knowing that even when something is taken, you still own your time, your choices, and your ability to adapt. And now when I walk through the sell zone, I walk with calm. I carry my crates like secrets. I move like water through the cracks. And I no longer fear the thieves, not because they disappeared, but because I stopped giving them the chance to define my path. Because selling without losing is not about being lucky. It is about being present, about playing with awareness, and about knowing that the garden gives its gifts to those who truly listen. So plant with care, walk with purpose, protect what you earn, and trust the journey. And when the day comes that a thief runs past, you will be the one standing steady, your crates safe, your heart calm, and your harvest intact, not because you fought